So my name's Gregory Csintalan. I am the personal injury attorney here at Campos Law. I also help with the juvenile visas, helping people under the age of 21 get a legal residency here in the United States. I've been with Campos Law for almost a year. So a personal injury case is a little bit different from other cases in the way that we're representing somebody that has been injured in some sort of incident and it wasn't their fault. So somebody else has injured them. Now, typically what we're trying to pursue in these instances is the insurance policy of an individual who has hurt somebody else. So that could be anything from a rear-end automobile crash. That could be someone running into somebody on the mountain, a dog attacking a child. It could be a variety of things. And there's different ways that we can look for insurance in these cases. It could be an auto insurance, it could be a homeowner's insurance, it could be any of the above. That is typically what makes a personal injury case a personal injury case, that we're representing somebody that has been hurt and it wasn't their fault. So the types of compensation that someone can receive if they're injured is the economic damages and also the non-economic damages. So the best way to think about this is that if someone goes to the doctor and they have a doctor's bill, doesn't matter if it's $1,000 or $10,000, whoever injured that person, or at least their insurance company, they should reimburse that person for the medical bills. The other types of economic damages that someone could potentially look into would be things that can be calculated monetarily. That would be things like if you missed time from work, if you had property that was damaged, anything like that. Those are the types of arguments that we make to try and pursue the economic damages. Now there's other types of damages, but broadly speaking, the one that immediately comes to mind for most people is the non-economic damages. That typically would be things like your pain and suffering, the frustration, just the emotional and mental toll that an injury can take on someone after they've been injured and it wasn't their fault. There's other types of damages, of course, but those are the two biggest categories that people often think of. Now, we ensure that victims obtain fair compensation from those that injure them or through their insurance companies by zealously advocating for our clients. We're an experienced law firm that has had a lot of success with the personal injury cases. I've been doing personal injury work for over 6 years now. So we have a lot of experience advocating for our clients. It's not just a one-stop shop situation where we just get the medical bills and the records, we just put them in the mail, send it to the insurance company and just ask them to make an offer, and then we take the offer and just kind of move on with our lives. We really try to work with our clients so we know the whole story about how this crash or incident has affected their lives, the toll it's taken on their family. We try to look at our clients not just as a set of numbers, but more as a story that has to be heard by the person who injured them. We also work to thoroughly evaluate everything. We look under every potential avenue of recovery for our clients. We don't just stop and say, oh, there was just one insurance policy available here. Maybe there's more. We always like to check and see if it's their owner that's different than the driver of a car. Maybe our client has some insurance that could help them in this situation. Maybe there's another type of policy that could help. So the thing that sets Campos apart in the personal injury realm from some other law firms, I think, would be just caring about our clients and really working to fully evaluate and then advocate on their behalf. Some common mistakes that people potentially make when they have a personal injury case, it often happens when there's a crash involved, or even if it could be, attacked by a dog or something like that. But it's just that they leave the scene of the incident without getting all the information that they're going to need to obtain some sort of relief for what has happened. Now, that could be not calling the police, that could be not getting the name or the insurance information of someone who has hit them. All these things would make it impossible to pursue fair compensation for their injuries. Another area where people often make the mistake is that they can not have their injuries fully evaluated. They need to make sure that if they're in pain and they're hurting, that they go get seen. It's for their health. And that's always important that they get better from their injuries or as good as they can get. Another way that people, and this is probably honestly the biggest mistake that people make, is just accepting low offers for their injuries. Sometimes I've seen an insurance company they haven't evaluated a bill, they haven't read a record, and then they're just offering, $2,000-$3,000 to somebody to just settle their claim. And once someone settles a claim, in most instances, there's no real way to open up that avenue of recovery again. You're kind of stuck with what you took. In most cases, obviously consult an attorney to make sure of that. But I think people underestimate the value of their claims. They don't evaluate it fully. And in the moment, it sounds good to take what I call a low ball off, wipe your hands of it and move forward. But potentially, it could be tens of thousands of dollars more even that someone is foregoing just because they haven't consulted with an attorney. Worst case, just talk to a lawyer so they can at least give you an honest opinion about what their case is potentially worth before you're just accepting any offer that you get from the insurance company. Some legal deadlines that affect someone's personal injury case, these are all dependent on what type of injury has occurred. In many instances, there is a 2-year time limit to settle a claim or to file a lawsuit. These will be things often for if something happens on someone else's property that you're injured by or attacked by an animal. These typically have 2-year deadlines. The deadlines people most often ask about though are the deadlines from a car crash. Now, if you are injured by somebody else and it's not your fault, in Colorado, you have 3 years to settle your claim or to file a lawsuit. Once that 3 years expires, your claim is likely time barred. Now, of course, different things could affect that deadline. If you're a minor, when it occurs, a variety of different factors. Generally, there's a 3-year statute of limitations. Of course, always consult with an attorney for an accurate opinion of what your deadlines are. Now, cases are handled a little differently when our own client is potentially partially at fault. What happens in these instances is that, for example, someone is speeding down the road to make it through a yellow light and someone makes an illegal turn in front of them. Possible that the other driver or an insurance company could argue that it wasn't all their driver's fault. They might not have hit the person, if they weren't speeding, if they weren't going faster than they should have been. Now, at that point, the insurance company is going to argue that, I'll make up a number, that the other person, the person that was injured, is 40% at fault. Now, these are the times when it's good to have an experienced attorney in your corner that can advocate for you and really dig into the facts, interview witnesses, and push back on the insurance company's evaluation. That if they say it's 40, well, maybe we disagree. Maybe it's a 0. Maybe it's 10%. For example's sake, the way that typically works, though, is once both parties can agree on potentially how much fault is allocated to the injured person, the final settlement or the final judgment is going to be offset by that percentage of fault. So just to make up a number, let's say that the final value of a claim was determined to be $10,000. If it turns out that the client was, let's say, 10% at fault, then that $10,000 is offset by the 10%. So in this case, $1,000. So instead of the client getting a check for the $10,000, they get a check for the $9,000. That's how insurance companies and individuals apportion fault when a client or an injured person is potentially partially at least at fault for a crash. The advice I would give to somebody that has been injured in a car crash and is not sure if they have a claim is call an attorney, call Campos Law. We offer free consultations, and at least then we can give you a general idea of where you currently stand with the case. If you are injured and it's not your fault, then there's going to be most likely some sort of compensation that you're entitled to. Just depends on what that amount is. Maybe you can handle it yourself. Maybe you do need a lawyer. Maybe you need to file a lawsuit already. All these things are generally unknowns until you speak to an attorney that can give you options and thoroughly evaluate all the different factors that play into the viability case potentially. It's important to know what your options are, especially if an attorney is offering a free evaluation of a case. So what I would recommend is always, if you're unsure, just call us. We're happy to talk. We have a team of individuals that can get information from you about the crash, and then we can go from there and at least let you know what your options are potentially. The other good thing about having Campos Law represent you for injuries you sustain that weren't caused by your own negligence is that we offer a contingency fee basis for payment for our services. That means we don't get paid until we successfully obtain compensation from the insurance company. So for example, that would be something like if the case, you have to invest a lot of money up front to do investigation or to obtain medical records, an opinion from a doctor, Campos Law would pay for those costs up front, and then for the attorney's fees, we would charge 1/3 most instances at the very end of a case. So that's what a contingency fee is, that you don't pay anything up front. The attorney just gets paid when he is able to recover compensation from the at-fault party. So that helps a lot of people. A lot of people don't have $5,000 to put down as a retainer or some cash on hand to hopefully get their case going. But of course, that's generally how personal injury attorney would be compensated. But of course, different things factor into that. So I'd always recommend just calling an attorney's office and talking to them about their options on how they can pay for those legal services. But most people do opt for this contingency fee model where they don't have to pay anything up front and they only have to pay at the end if we win for their case. Process for negotiating with an insurance company is always a little different. It always depends on the case. The main things are always going to be obtaining medical records and medical bills and providing those to the insurance companies after the attorney has had an opportunity to review all those medical records, familiarize themselves with the ins and outs and nuances of every injury that a client has, and then from there making sure that the insurance company doesn't devalue or undervalue what someone has gone through as far as their injuries are concerned. Additional things that help negotiate better results with insurance companies, they could be statements from loved ones that show the insurance company just what a toll the negligence of their driver has had on somebody. It helps to humanize what someone has gone through beyond just records and bills. It takes a nuanced and honestly a compassionate touch to make sure that someone's story is being told. Other things that insurance companies often evaluate would be things like documentation of missed work, documentation of damaged property. But at the end of the day, one of the most important things is just making sure that the other party sees that you're not just a number, you're a person, and that they understand the effect that a crash or an injury has had on somebody. So then my recommendation to you is to call Campos Law if you've been in a crash. If you're not sure if it was your fault, their fault, you're not sure if you have a claim or not, call us and let us help you for free with a free consultation today. So call Campos Law today, 720-951-7730 to obtain a free consultation and see what your options are. It's overwhelming to deal with these things on your own. So if someone's offering you a bit of free help, I suggest take it. So call us today at Campos Law, 720-951-7730.